welcome to the Oxford Clay Pottery podcast. I'm Catherine Tomlinson and I started an eco-conscious pottery company called Oxford Clay. Now, at Oxford Clay, I don't just make pottery, I also make resources such as books and courses and information for other potters who want to be more eco-conscious in their pottery practice but maybe don't know where to start or can't find out the information they need. So that's what this podcast is all about. It's about sharing everything I've learned along my eco-conscious pottery journey with you, and I can't wait to get started. So let's go. Hello, welcome to the Oxford Clay Pottery podcast. I'm your host, Catherine Tomlinson, and I'm coming to you today with a bonus episode because for the last 5 episodes of the podcast, I've been talking to you about creating eco-conscious color in pottery and different ways of doing it, and like why we might not want to use like commercial metal oxides. That was like episode 1, and we talked about like using metals and glass and plant ashes and clay to in each individual episode to create color in pottery eco-consciously. But what I wanted to tell you about in this like bonus episode, I thought it'd be quite fun just to tell you about some things that I've tried to use in pottery, to color pottery that like haven't worked. Yeah, because I like I was saying to you in episode 1, this has been a really, really long experience for me in terms of like kind of developing ways to create color. So it's been years, like years in development, and all the knowledge in the book Eco Conscious Pottery Color is basically like the culmination of all those experiments over all of those years, as well as lots of kind of glazing experiments like this summer to kind of create the recipes and stuff for the book. So there's like 80 recipes in there. Okay, so let's talk about some things that like haven't worked. Right. Okay. So, so looking back, I mean, these things are probably quite obvious that they wouldn't work. But at the time, I thought, let's just try. Let's just trying different things. Let's just try some different things. Okay, so in the beginning, I thought that I knew that like iron was a pottery colorant, like iron oxide. Iron oxide is a pottery colorant. So surely things that have like lots of iron in, like foods, for example, that are iron rich, surely they might, color pottery. So I tried to use foods which I thought were rich in iron. So one time I used chia seeds because I'd read that they were like very nutritious, and I thought, oh yeah, maybe chia seeds could be used to color pottery. So basically, just sprinkled some chia seeds. This is not advisable, by the way. So just a disclaimer: probably shouldn't like put food in your kiln. Yeah. But anyway, I've done it and it didn't work. So you don't have to experiment with it. But yeah, so basically sprinkled some chia seeds in pottery. Not only did it like not color it, but it kind of just like disrupted the surface of the glaze. So I ended up with this like really rough glaze. It was like a really beautiful shiny wood ash glaze that then just went all kind of like matte from like the chia seeds just like messing up the surface of the glaze. Added no color at all. So that was one failed experiment. Another thing I tried was just to add like treacle because I knew that like sugar molasses contain like a lot of like minerals, and like I knew that like maybe there'd be some metals in there as well. I knew that it was like a very kind of like nutritious thing to eat, and just in terms of like the mineral iron content of it and stuff. So yeah, so I just tried drizzling some treacle onto pottery. I thought that this is going to be amazing. It's going to make some color. Again, the same thing happened. Yeah, it's not advisable to fire treacle in your kiln. And also, yeah, it's nothing. Yeah, the same thing happened as with the chia seeds. It basically just ended up disrupting the surface of the glaze and creating like no color at all. So yeah, that was a bit of a disaster. And then another 2 things I tried were some plants that I thought would be really good at creating color because of the fact that I know that they're very like mineral rich. So the first plant is like comfrey, and I thought, oh, comfrey. So I knew that like gardeners use comfrey to kind of mine metals like from the earth, and then they can make like a comfrey tea out of it, and then use it to like fertilize them, and then you can use it to like fertilize their plants. So I thought, okay, this is going to be great. Like the comfrey is going to be like getting all these metals from deep in the earth, and then it's going to like yeah, put it into its leaves. I can use comfrey leaves and I can make a pottery glaze out of it. And I don't know. Maybe there are some ways of using comfrey to make color in pottery. That's like the ash and stuff. But I just used comfrey leaves, dried them, burned them, made them into an ash, and the glaze was just kind of like a kind of matte white color. And if you actually want to, if you want to see what comfrey leaves like look like, that's actually in Pottery Glazing with Plant Ash. That book, it's got like comfrey leaves in that, and it's basically, yeah, it's kind of like a white glaze basically. So I was like, oh, that's really strange. I thought it would be like, I thought at least it would have like lots of kind of usually get like brown speckles from like the iron in it and stuff, but no. Yeah, so that was interesting. Another thing that I tried was that I was when I was researching how to plant ashes. It's something I've been thinking about loads and um, reading a lot about in terms of like adding color to pottery using ashes from plants. And I knew that some plants are this thing called like a hyperaccumulator. And when I was researching, I was like reading lots of journal articles about the fact that like some plants are actually used to kind of clean the soil after pollution. So there's like, yeah, some studies going on about how plants can be used in like the tailings, the mine tailings. So if it's like if the earth has been polluted from mining and there's like tailings around that are like discarded like rocks from the mining operations, discarded soil that's been polluted, you can actually grow certain plants on that soil and they will take up the kind of heavy metals, the metals in their tissues, and they will clean the earth. Which is just incredible. And I knew that some of these plants, hyperaccumulator plants, included brassicas, plants from the brassica family. And there's all sorts of different plants that do it, and they basically can just withstand like polluted soil a lot, like at higher concentrations than like other plants can, and then they kind of accumulate the metals like in their tissues. So I was like, okay, great. What about if I use, I'm growing some kale. So I thought, okay, I'm growing some kale. Maybe it's a hyper accumulator plant. Maybe it's just naturally, wasn't growing it on polluted soil, but I thought maybe it will just naturally, accumulate lots of trace metals in its tissues. And so then I used, yeah. So then what I did was after I'd eaten all the kale from the plant I grew, I actually used the kale stem because it's got this like very woody stem, and I dried it and then I made that into an ash and yeah, used that to make a glaze. And then, the same thing happened. It was a very kind of like white like like glaze. It wasn't, yeah, it had basically no color in it at all, which was really really surprising. Yeah, so that was kale stems. That was no. Okay, and then the latest thing I've been trying to experiment with to add color to glazes is actually fermented seaweed, which might sound like, yeah, like a really wild idea, but basically you can get lots of different fertilizers, like commercial fertilizers, which are produced for gardeners, gardeners who maybe want to be like organic, grow things organically. They can use like seaweed. There's loads and loads of natural minerals and metals in seaweed, and some fertilizers are produced using this seaweed. And I thought, okay, this is great. This is a great opportunity to use these fertilizers. I can add them as like the liquid to the glaze. I thought if I just basically made the glaze with these liquid fertilizers, just pure, as the liquid, and didn't add any additional water, they would create like these amazing colors. And what actually happened was like they produced absolutely no color. I'm just holding up some glaze tests. And if you're listening on the podcast, just imagine some completely colorless glaze tests. Literally no color at all, just like just a transparent glaze, basically, transparent base glaze, and that had a seaweed fertilizer. I used 2 different types of seaweed fertilizer. Um, one actually was made with, one was made, I'm not sure how it was made, just with seaweed, and then one was actually made with fermented seaweed, from Cornwall. And what I did with that one, because it seemed a little bit more like watery, I actually, I actually evaporated it, so it was like double the strength. So I spent ages and ages with this with this like open container of fermented seaweed juice just basically evaporating to the point where it was I kept on measuring it every day. Is it got to double concentration? So like half, like half the water, and then I sort of measure it, and then I by the when it got to like half the level of liquid, I thought, yes, it's double concentration. So then I basically then added it to a base glaze, but it had absolutely no effect, which I actually found really really surprising because on this fermented seaweed product from Cornwall, it's got a breakdown of all the different metals, like from the basically you're feeding your plants. It's like you want to know what's in the fertilizer, and it does have loads of trace metals. So I was really really surprised that didn't work, but I guess it just wasn't the highest, a high enough concentration. So I mean, perhaps more experiments are needed with that one. I could even um, you know um, evaporate it to like a quarter of the liquid or something. I don't know, but it didn't have any effect at like double concentration. But yeah, I just thought I'd tell you about those things because it was really fun doing all those experiments and stuff. And it is like a bit disappointing when when you've done them and you're like, oh, it doesn't really have any effect. But it's all part of the kind of learning process of finding out what does work. And like I said, I've done all that research, so you don't have to. And if you wanted 4 ways to make eco-conscious pottery color, there are 4 ways. Yeah, using scrap metals, glass, plant ash, and clay in eco-conscious pottery color. That book, which you can get from the Oxford Clay website or Amazon. Yeah. Oh, thanks so much for joining me. It's been so nice, like talking to you about those the failures of making color with different things. Yeah, really nice sharing it with you. Yeah, so thank you so much for joining me on this episode. And I'm really looking forward to seeing you on the next episode. And until then, happy experimenting, happy potting, happy glaze making if that's what you're up to, or just general potting. Or maybe you're making eco-conscious pottery color. I don't know. But yeah, just thank you so much for joining me, and I will see you soon. Okay, goodbye. Oh, yeah. So I hope you enjoyed that episode. And if you're interested to learn more about eco conscious pottery or making your pottery more eco conscious and sustainable, there's so much for you on the Oxford Clay website, which is www.oxfordclay.co.uk. I can't wait to see you there.